Moving forward with Elliotte Friedman here, our NHL Network insider. Elliotte, it has been a busy week, to say the least. The Canucks sending shockwaves across the NHL on Monday, firing Jim Benning and Travis Green. Stan Smyl named the interim GM. What's the latest on Vancouver's search for maybe a permanent general manager?
Well, I hesitate to put a timeline on it, Jameson, because I think they've been doing a lot of their work already. Basically, if there's a name that's out there, and even some names that could potentially be out there or not, and are not out there yet, what I think, or not available yet, the Canucks have done their due diligence. I think they've been basically combing through almost every name you can think of and saying, okay, if we were interested in this person, would they fit? Is there anything here we need to know? Are they the kind of person we want? What do we think their plan would be? You know, for example, I think they've already started considering people who are available, people like Jim Rutherford, Marc Bergevin, and Scott Mellanby, and I think they will do plenty more. I can't give you a good timeline on it. One of the things they've told or they've indicated and kind of, you know, I thought they confirmed yesterday was that is that they're not going to rush into anything until they're absolutely certain they get the people they want. And if you look at the guy they hired as head coach, Bruce Boudreau, the reason that Boudreau was willing to went in there was he was willing to accept a 2-year deal. And I think that's what the Canucks are saying right now. No long-term decisions until we know for sure, and that's where they are.
All right, from long-term to maybe very short-term, we've seen Tuuka Rask skating with the Boston Bruins a number of times lately. Aside from being maybe the greatest e-bug in Bruins history right now, what's the latest on his future there?
Well, I think it's getting closer. It's looking more and more like there's going to be something happening. You know, there's two stories kind of coming out of Boston right now in terms of player movement, and one is their efforts to potentially move Jake DeBrusk, and the other is on Tuuka Rask. And you know, the word on the weekend was Boston was getting back from a road trip, and they start maybe having conversations with Rask about signing him to a deal. I think it's where he wants to be, and they need him. And I think it's trending in that direction as soon as everybody's ready.
All right, we'll see how it all plays out across the NHL. Elliotte Friedman with the latest. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, have a good night.
For more on the NHL and the coaching changes, we welcome in our buddy Dave Pagnotta of the Fourth Period, also our NHL Network insider. Dave, with the Vancouver firing of Jim Benning, what is the current situation there, not on the bench, but in the Canucks front office?
Yeah, the Aquilinis are going to, the ownership group, are going to start that process now in terms of finding the right mix of a new front office. They've got a good nucleus in place of the current group, but what they want to do is see what the options are out there available to them. Is it going to be strictly a general manager position? Are they going to look to bring in somebody to head up hockey operations? Is it going to be a combo similar to what the Montreal Canadiens have been going through? So what they are going to look at is finding the right pieces in place. And we're already starting to hear some names coming up, speaking of Montreal, with respect to Marc Bergevin and Scott Mellanby as potential candidates. They are going to be stretching this. This is going to be a lengthy type of search for the Vancouver Canucks. They don't want to rush anything. They brought Bruce Boudreau in to man things on the ice and to get this team going back in the right direction. But in terms of overall philosophy and longevity of a plan for this group, they want to take their time in making the right decisions to bring in the right managerial team. And it certainly sounds like it's going to be more than one individual who will head up the building of what this next group of Canucks is going to look like.
All right, from Vancouver to Philly, we talked about Alain Vigneault. He was let go by the Flyers. Mike Yeo slides in the interim. What is their next move there in Philadelphia?
Well, they're going to ride, Jameson, with Mike Yeo for the time being. And Chuck Fletcher, their general manager, speaking earlier today, indicating that they want to see what he can do as the full guy behind the bench, even though he is, you know, on an interim basis, before they start looking at what their options are. They don't want to rush this process. They want to make sure that they've got whatever options they have in place, but at the same time, giving Mike Yeo the opportunity to get this group going in the right direction. And if he can do that, he'll certainly be in contention to take on a full-time role as the official head coach. But again, this is not something that they want to rush into. They want to see how this team can do with Yeo as the guy leading the pack, and then decide what route they want to go from there. There's certainly going to be some candidates that are going to put their hat in the ring to see if, you know, they could be of interest to the Philadelphia Flyers, like Rick Tocchet, which a lot of people are kind of zeroing in on. But for the time being, Mike Yeo's the guy, and they're going to see how he can do and hopefully get this team trending upward.
All right, Blackhawks, one of the teams already making a coaching change earlier this season. Chicago has been playing better hockey of late, but still sounds like there could be some roster shakeup there in the Windy City. Who are some names that might be on the block coming up?
Yeah, this is going to be a team that I think between now and the trade deadline in March are going to be willing to listen on a variety of different players. Now, we know certainly Dylan Strome is a guy that is still available. He's somebody that was shopped prior to the changes that were made off the ice in Chicago. He's still somebody that is available and that the Blackhawks are not only taking calls on, but having discussions with other teams about as well. But in addition to Strome, there's a defenseman on this club who's in the final year of his contract in Calvin DeHaan. And for teams that are looking to shore up their blue line and bring in somebody that can stabilize that back end, Calvin DeHaan is going to be a player that a lot of teams are going to be looking at closer to that deadline. Another name up there, number 3 on that list that you're showing, and Marc-Andre Fleury. I think Fleury is going to effectively dictate where he wants to go, or at least what he wants to do closer to the deadline. If Chicago is totally out of it and Marc-Andre Fleury wants an opportunity to chase another championship, I think the Blackhawks are going to give him that shot. And if the right deal falls into place, then they'll take that into consideration and try to make that happen. It's a little premature right now with respect to Flower, but this is going to be a scenario to watch out for as the season progresses. As you mentioned, Chicago's doing well right now, but if they can't get back into the thick of things from a playoff perspective and are in a full race closer to the March 21st trade deadline, then you're going to start to hear a little bit more rumblings with respect to Marc-Andre Fleury. But Calvin DeHaan, definitely a player. Ryan Carpenter as well. A couple guys that are going to be looked at closer to the D-Day.
All right, interesting stuff there. You already mentioned Montreal. The Canadiens struggling this season. That could also lead to some roster shakeup there north of the border. Do you think new Vice President of Hockey Operations, Jeff Gorton, is ready to start making some moves now? And if so, what moves do you expect moving forward?
Yeah, well, he's certainly willing to listen. Now, they're going to start their process, I believe, this week with respect to finding a new GM, at least get that ball rolling. But with respect to teams calling about some of their players, Jeff Gorton's the guy that's going to handle that. They already made one move in bringing in Kyle Clague from LA via the waiver wire, but there are pieces of Montreal that other teams find attractive, and one being Ben Sherratt on that back end, another defenseman that is likely to be moved between now and that trade deadline. Sherratt proved himself in the playoffs last season and in the season prior, getting that experience. I believe he has 23 playoff games in the last 2 playoffs. Teams that are contenders are certainly going to take that into account. It sounds like it's going to cost a first-round pick and a little bit more than that, at least right now. I don't believe anything is imminent to this stage, but he's likely to be a player that is going to be moved closer to the deadline. Brett Kulak is another defenseman, 27 years old currently, who's a pending UFA. He's another guy for teams looking to bring in somebody to kind of shore up that 6-7 slot on the back end. He's going to be a player to look at. The other interesting name there, Jonathan Drouin. He's got 1 year left on his contract after this season before becoming an unrestricted free agent. He's currently 26. A lot of teams like his playmaking and passing ability. He would be somebody that teams would have interest in, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are some calls that are made closer to that deadline to see what they can pry out of him. The Canadiens, with the draft in Montreal in July, wouldn't mind picking up some pieces to kind of amplify the excitement closer to draft time.
All right, Dave Pagnotta earning his paycheck today, that's for sure. All kinds of great information. Appreciate the insight. We'll talk to you whenever any more news breaks. Thank you.